Howdy, Dennis Bradford here. Let's think some about being, feeling, and doing better. How do we learn about emotions? Is it really possible to learn how to diminish emotional distress? If so, how? It's important to step back from our ordinary understanding of emotions and examine it without assumptions or presuppositions. So, let's wonder about emotions and our ordinary understanding of them. How can we tell if our ordinary understanding of them is accurate? Suppose, for example, I notice that I feel very down or sad when I learned of my mother's death. I experience emotions. Suppose, for example, that I notice that my friend Dave is extremely distressed when he's told that his teenage daughter has been raped and murdered. Others I know experience emotions. Emotions, passions, are disturbances. They disrupt peace of mind. Peace of mind is valuable. Just ask anyone who lacks it. Emotional distress is no fun. Emotions are motivators. Don't we often behave in ways that are intended to enable us to feel certain emotions? Emotions, then, are relevant to living well. We want to master them rather than to have them master us. How? As the Danish philosopher Søren Kierkegaard put it, in order to swim, one takes off all one's clothes. In order to aspire to the truth, one must undress in a far more inward sense. Divest oneself of all one's inward clothes, of thoughts, conceptions, selfishness, etc., before one is sufficiently naked, end quote. We initially need to set aside, to bracket, to detach from all our beliefs about emotions and examine them. If determined to be correct, it's easy to reattach to them. If determined to be incorrect, just replace them with better beliefs. So, examining them is a win either way. There's nothing to lose. It's win-win. Examining them, though, requires deliberate effort. Why? It's because the ordinary ways that we understand forms, objects, things, have become so habitual, automatic, familiar, instantaneous, that they become indistinguishable from merely singling them out. Again, it's the difference in logic between X and X is F, where X stands for some form or other and F stands for equality. Suppose, for example, that you walk into your living room and notice the sofa there. Did you first single it out and then categorize it as a sofa? Or did you just see it as a sofa? You just saw it as a sofa, didn't you? It's a familiar object that you've likely perceived thousands of times. You didn't wonder about it at all. That's in contrast to when you first singled out a sofa as an infant. Back then, you had no idea what it was. You had to wonder about it. To understand it, you had to relate its similarities and differences to other things that you'd previously come to understand. In this way, as our ordinary experiences become more and more familiar, we tend to wonder about them less and less. Eventually, many, even most, of our daily experiences may seem repetitive, stale, flat, boring, uninteresting. It requires something unusual for us to begin to wonder again about familiar objects. Perhaps we have to try to see a sofa through the eyes of an artist like Picasso, or to see it afresh after taking some psychoactive drug, or after prolonged meditation. According to Plato, Socrates said that the, quote, sense of wonder is the mark of the philosopher. Philosophy, indeed, has no other origin. 155d. According to Aristotle, quote, for it is owing to their wonder that men both now begin and at first began to philosophize, end quote, 982b14. I invite you to wonder about emotions. That requires deliberately examining them from a fresh perspective. Ask seriously, is it possible to live well emotionally? If so, how? To wonder seriously about anything is to philosophize about it. Emotions are important to human beings. We sometimes find ourselves emotionally disturbed. What's going on? Please wonder seriously about them for yourself. Consider your own emotional experiences. Take a couple of good, intense examples, such as the imaginary 2 examples I previously suggested. Here's the critical question. Do emotions have a common structure? It would seem that they do. Otherwise, what commonality would all emotional experiences have? What is that structure? What do you think it is? In other words, I encourage you to examine them for yourself. Wonder about them. Think about them. Mull over your emotional experiences. Sleep on that question. In the next video in this sequence, I offer you my analysis of their common structure. Once you understand it, evaluate it. If it's better than your own, adopt it. If it's worse than your own, reject it. You be the judge. Since emotions are important, it's important that you think seriously about them. Let's resolve to get this area of life handled well once and for all. If it's true that prolonged emotional distress is optional, it's important for you to make it part of your past, but not part of your future. Let's end emotional distress.